dear cardinals, archbishop, bishop, brother and sister in Christ, in our afternoon session, we will still remain by the same topic of family, but the focus will be the apostolic exhortation of the Pope Francis, Amoris Laetitia. The opportunities that Amoris Laetitia offers the Church in Asia for effective ministry. We will have two speakers, Bishop John Baptist Lee from Taiwan and Father Vimal Tirimanna CSsR from Sri Lanka. The first speaker is Bishop John Baptist Lee Keh-mien from Taiwan. He is the president of the Chinese Regional Bishops' Conference. Bishop Lee will speak around 20 minutes. Please, Bishop.
Your Eminences, Your Excellencies, Reverend Fathers, Sisters, dearest brothers and sisters, good afternoon. Before sharing you, I would like to thank you, Mrs. Claire Ye, prepared this paper and sharing one story about myself in this FABC. That's my first sharing in FABC. After that, one bishop come to tell me, John, what you said, I cannot understand, but I read it, it's okay. So that's why I show full the text on the screen. You can read it. Okay, so let me start, and time is limited. Amoris Laetitia, a call to love. The pastoral synodal apostolic exhortation Amoris Laetitia on the beauty and the joy of conjugal and family love was promulgated in 2016. Since then, the Holy Father Francis has been favorably promoting a new pastoral approach to the family situation. Through many occasions, in particular during the year of Amoris Laetitia, and the recently concluded 10th World Meeting of the Families in Rome, to which I personally wholly participated. I want to take this opportunity to share with you the experience and insight on how this new pastoral approach of family may be firmly established and sustained. It is particularly important to survey the contemporary family situation. In Taiwan and in many ASEAN countries, we are seeing an aging population with low fertility rate and a morose attack on the formation and the value upon hold by Christian marriage. Not to mention the challenges, separation, and even great suffering among families brought upon by the pandemic in the past 3 years. Exactly. On this base, very family, despite its weakness, can become a light in the darkness of the world. What are the ultimate goals of Amoris Laetitia. The dicastery of the laity, family, and life has rightly started 5 goals of celebrating the year of Amoris Laetitia. Based on my pastoral experience, I will reference and evaluate them in the 3 categories as follows. First, we need to increase the exposure of Amoris Laetitia to bring more people to read and to be touched by Amoris Laetitia. Only families that discover and experience both the joy of having a gift and of being a gift for the church and the society can become a light in the darkness of the world. And the world around us today, especially in Asia, need this light. Second, we the pastor need to work with the families. Pastor and the families must be joined together and cultivate a strong sense of co-responsibility. And the pastor complementary among the different vocations in the church. Third, the church needs to provide resources so that to enable family to become active agents of the family apostolate. That is an effort at evangelization and catechism inside the family. It is called for. We can be assured that a family of disciples will transform into missionary family. And the effort need to include married couples, children, young people, the elderly, and all situations of family fragility. Actions. The contemplated families, especially the spouse, embark on a dynamic, often chaotic and challenging long journey in a ever-changing society. Since they want to establish this beautiful conjugal bond, the discovery of the laity, family, and life has crafted working with families. 12 concrete pastoral proposals for joining with the families, inspired by Amoris Laetitia. Not to be redundant in what follows, I will share the pastoral insights that I have observed from particular implementation in Taiwan. What I want to highlight is how we may build and sustain and companion community that the Holy Father Francis wants to see in our church. This includes all the stage of the sacramental journey, the time of preparation for marriage, its celebration, and the years that follow, especially when spouses go through crisis and moment of discouragement. To bring this inquiry, we may wonder who belong to the accompanying community. Just like we have heard and have been inspired by the first conference theme of the 10th World Meeting of Family, the domestic church and synodality can be and has to be brought into the presence of the accompanying community. We, the bishops, with the parish priests, and of course many couples, should all actively participate in the marriage program to truly uphold the communion of the communities. I have found that parish priests really need to have a retreat and to accommodate themselves, especially in confronting the contemporary challenges in pastoral care of the youth and of marriage and the family. So with the help of marriage couples, parish priests who participate in such program, which effectively simulate real family accompaniment, might then be able to deliver what the Holy Father passionately calls. This is what I am asking you, be shepherds with the small of sheep. There is no better time to investigate a pre-marriage handbook to counteract that very harmful social impact inflicting the newlyweds. A good and comprehensive permanent program will be like a vaccine, which may not keep virus out of your body 100% of time, but significantly reduce the big risk of marriage breakdown. To be sure, a good pre-marriage program has to be tolerant to enable the engaged couple to cope with the modern challenges, developing good communication skill, managing finance, a spring for children, having a common spiritual life, and etc. And certainly, this kind of frequent programs will require dedicated and diverse groups of couples to serve the purpose. So that the need for manpower is of paramount importance. At the same time, it is important not to overlook the positive feedback loop that might be created here. The benefactor, that is, those who attend the pre-marriage program, are the appropriate candidates to become the benefactor, that is, the future companions. Listening. Listening is a very crucial element of accompaniment. In time when people are forever busy, and especially during such pandemic as the current one, the format of listening should be and can be creative. And this is what we have started in the Taipei Archdiocese of Taiwan, to train more than 20 volunteer operators on the family hotline, to listen to the incoming calls of those who are need counseling in their marriage through phone calls or other social networking platforms. A companion family is need an act of urgency, not only for the pastoral urgent to be equipped with fundamental skills, but also with zeal and compassion. That comes from our heart. As Pope Francis said, and I quote, "The church task is often like a field hospital. Our task is to reach out to everyone without frontiers, to help each person to find his or her proper way of participating in the ecclesial community, and those experience being touched by the unconditional love and the mercy of God. Each one of us may listen to their concerns, problems, hopes, and desire by our love and care, by leaving a mark in their lives and avoiding judgment. This is a profound spiritual experience to complement our loved ones with the eyes of God and to see Christ in them. All of us are called to keep striving toward something greater than ourselves and our families. And every family must feel this constant impulse. Let us take this journey as families. Let us keep working together. May we never lose heart because of our limitations, or even stop seeking that fullness of love and the communion with God hold out before us. As summarized in a few concise points. First, the challenges of Christian marriage are real and ever-changing. Second, synodality is an open invitation to all. Parish pastors and the families need to join and grow together. Third, take pre-marital program utmost seriousness, for it lays solid foundation. Fourth, we need the creative motivation and all the necessary resources, such as compassion, theology, counseling, etc. The way forward. The dicastery for the laity, family, and life is a response to the Holy Father's desire to offer a new path for preparation for the sacrament of marriage, has published a handbook titled Catechism for Marriage Life. It rightly includes all the stages of the sacramental journey, the time of preparation for marriage, its celebration, and the years that follow, especially that spouse might go through crisis and moments of discouragement. This new catechism will be a welcoming path when there is permanent accompaniment. It acknowledges that the journey of marriage and the family is not complete on the day of the wedding, which is not a point of arrival, but the beginning of a spouse life in which husband and wife will gain a renewed Christian identity, as is the case for priests and the religious. And during this life, they will need to accompaniment. The document, as Holy Father notes, is both a gift and a responsibility. We need to take up the mandate to update local church guidelines into concrete program based on cultural sensibilities. My dear brother, let us work along the path of families and be true companion to the most fragile. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Bishop John, for your presentation about the Amoris Laetitia, but also some pastoral insights based on Amoris Laetitia you have observed from the practical implementation in Taiwan. Please come again on the stage to receive the memento. Let us now take 2 minutes of silent prayer. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Now I would like to invite Father Vimal Tirimanna CSsR from Sri Lanka as our second speaker. Father Vimal teaches at the Accademia Alfonsiana in Rome and is also a member of the Theological Commission of the General Secretariat for the Synod. Father Tirimanna, please.
Good afternoon, dear bishops and other participants. We heard just now a sort of a succinct presentation of what Amoris Laetitia amounts to. I have been asked by the organizers to present some opportunities which the document Amoris Laetitia presents to pastors in the church. So I will try to do justice, and I am given around 20 minutes to do that. This is the theme assigned to me, Amoris Laetitia, Call to Love. But I will concentrate, being an FABC meeting, more than on theory, how the opportunities unfold in this document. Of course, the document consists of 325 articles. I don't know how I'm going to manage in 20 minutes, around 20 minutes, but we should, because more important is reflection. And I have tried to order this very short presentation in two parts, rather three, but main two parts are: what are the differences that Amoris Laetitia unfolds, especially in its method, and then how these differences present opportunities. And in the second part, I go to specific issues, controversial issues, like homosexual unions, divorce and remarried, etc. I don't need to prolong, because introduction can be too cumbersome, and it should not be longer than the talk. So I begin here. For nearly, dear brothers and sisters, for nearly 7 decades, that's nearly 70 years, issues to do with both family and marriage had been a great preoccupation for the official church. It's enough to remember people like Guardini, Romano Guardini, in 1940s, 50s have been expressing, people like him expressing concern. And then Second Vatican Council under Gaudium et Spes, one of the things that concerns the modern day issues is marriage and family. Then St. John Paul II, and now Francis speaking about them. Soon after his election in 2013, the Pope, as Bishop Lee said, launched this unprecedented process. We are into synodality at the moment, but I think synodality, the process of synodality began with the process for Amoris Laetitia, a 2-year process. If we want, we can discuss that during the discussion. And as the peritus for the FABC bishops there, some of you remember, at both the synods, I too remember how some of the nitty-gritties took place. The climax of that process was, in fact, the document. Now I want to say something which concerns bishops and other pastors like priests, namely, when Pope started that unprecedented process, there were concerns expressed in the secular media. Sometimes more than the church's official media, secular media tries to say what the church should say or what the church is saying in their own way. So there were concerns expressed that this is a ploy, this is a trick by Pope Francis to change Church's teaching on divorce and remarriage, especially reception of sacraments. Or it's a ploy to recognize the so-called homosexual unions, but none of them happened. If you opened Amoris Laetitia, nowhere is it mentioned. In fact, indissolubility of marriage is reconfirmed, confirmed and reconfirmed. That Catholic understanding of marriage is a heterosexual marriage is reconfirmed, and explicitly Pope denies that Church can never recognize so-called homosexual marriages. So some of the fears were unfounded, unnecessary. Nevertheless, they were there. And that spoiled, yes, I'm right in saying that. That spoiled the final outcome, Amoris Laetitia, because people were wearing, as I am wearing these glasses, they were wearing glasses of prejudice and reading. In fact, permit me, with all due respect to our bishops here, at least a couple of bishops from Asia, not from Siberia, from Asia have told me openly during the past years, Vimal, what is happening? What is happening to our Holy Father? He has changed. I said, have you read the document? No, I don't read such documents. Now this has happened to me. So I think we have to be practical at a conference like this, so I want to say that. So I hope I will present some of the important point. Amoris Laetitia is different, very different from earlier teachings in the sense that it directly confronts the marital and family problems. As we say in English, it takes the bull by the horns. Not of imaginary people, but of real people living out there in the world. We are coming from families, all of us, including the Holy Father. We have our families. We know our families and our nephews, nieces, and others, what things they go through. It is to address them that Amoris Laetitia is written rather than from an ideal point of view. In doing so, it offers the balm of mercy. Pope John the 23rd, St. John the 23rd spoke about balm of mercy to shattered families and broken marriages. I want to quote here Blaise Cardinal Supich of Chicago. In one of his talks, in my hearing, I remember him saying, there has been no change in doctrine in Amoris Laetitia, and I reconfirm it here. If you want, we can discuss during the discussions. What is new and revolutionary is the way the church is church now. Dear friends, this is the line I want to underline. If there is a difference, the difference is ecclesiology. What is the church now? What do we understand by church? That's the issue. So I'm still in the quotation of Cardinal Supich. The way the church acts, the way the church ministers to the people. Now the church is indeed a field hospital, says Cardinal Supich. Here I notice so many opportunities. In sharp contrast to earlier teachings, Amoris Laetitia has stopped lamenting. Many of our earlier teachings, rightly so, they were confined to condemning what was going on in the world, what was going on in the church, rightly so. They limited themselves to lamenting. You read most of the earlier official teachings, they are all so upset, and Pope Francis is also very upset, as we see in the second chapter when he talks. But he does not limit himself to condemning, lamenting, but he goes beyond. Neither is Amoris Laetitia satisfied merely by repeating church's doctrine. Dear friends, I put that Latin phrase, repeating ad nauseum. Just repeating doctrine. Pope says in number 36, by repeating our church doctrine, it means nothing. Of course, in the teaching from the teaching point of view, it's a way of conscientizing, way of forming consciences, no doubt. But it won't solve the problems. We have to do something. So, I have underlined there, dear participants, the question asked by Amoris Laetitia is, what can the church do in the face of the complicated, complex questions regarding family and marriage today? It reminds that the role of the church, now here, I am a Redemptorist. I am a son of St. Alphonsus Maria di Ligori, the official Catholic patron of moral theology. His point was, he is still the official patron, his point was, the church's role is to form the consciences of the people. Pope Francis simply repeats that. Here is a major methodological change. I think we have to take this, although we don't have time, we better, as they say in Italian, soffermiamoci qui. Let's dwell a little bit. Because very often, I am a priest now for 35 years. How many times in my preaching, in my ministering, during our Redemptorist missions, I have tried to replace the conscience of the people. I am trying to tell them what they should be. That's not our role. Of course, forming, telling them is part of it. But it doesn't stop there. It's they, the conscience of the person, who should ultimately act. Second Vatican Council in Gaudium et Spes number 16, and again Dignitatis Humanae, then Pope John Paul II in Veritatis Splendor repeats all this. Let's go faster before Father Clarence gives me a sign there that time is up. Is it up already? Not yet. There is time. Pastoral care, in his very introduction to Amoris Laetitia, the Pope says that the pastors of the church would be interested in chapter 6. Because, I don't know, it may be the Latin American way, the present Pope's documents are very, very long. Even for someone who teaches theology, they are very long. So, he says, read chapter by chapter in the introduction, he says, and chapter 6 interests pastors, while chapter 8 challenges everybody, says the Pope. More than half of chapter 6 is dedicated to the crucial but indispensable role of a pastor, to accompany couples. Now this we need to hear well. This is an opportunity. Rather than sitting in our armchair and telling this is the doctrine, we need to accompany them. This is a purely Franciscan character, Franciscan in the sense Pope Francis's characteristics. Before marriage, during marriage, and after marriage. I think Father Clarence may remember, he was also the Executive Secretary of the OTC just after me. We issued 2 documents already on marriage, not 2, even more. But in that we always spoke about this point. It cannot be limited only at marriage, pre-Keh-mien meetings. It has to be before, during, and after. So FABC has jumped the gun, so to say. Someone was interviewing me the other day, asking, did FABC contribute anything to the universal church? Here is one point where we have been taking the lead and saying, much before Pope Bergoglio was elected. Here is another important point to be kept in mind. It's not easy, says the Pope, to give fixed pastoral recipes that fits every situation. He quotes Thomas Aquinas and Pope Paul VI, St. Paul VI. And so it calls for particular contextual pastoral solutions that suit diverse contexts. Dear bishops and others, this is important. As a parish priest, as a pastor, I would love to have a book of recipes. Here's a marriage case. What does the law say? It will fit in here. There's another case. This will be the recipe. We can't do that. This is simple moral theology. We have to take into account circumstances, context, intentions. That's Church's cherished fundamental moral theology. So this is an important point we need to take into account. The rule of thumb given by A-level is to accompany, discern, and integrate. Of course, this basic rule has to be tempered. Bishop Lee said about it already. He used the word compassion. Pope uses regularly. They have to be tempered by mercy. And another point is, it has to be a personal and pastoral discernment. We can't, as pastors, responsible pastors, we can't say, you go and decide what you want. This couple can go and decide what they want. That remarried person, no. Personal decision, yes. Conscience, yes. But personal and pastoral. The pastor has to accompany the persons. That's why it is put that way. However, in each and every particular pastoral context, a serious and conscientious discernment is called for, rather than applying rules arbitrarily. So it's a matter of forming consciences of people. It's a matter of accompanying persons by their pastors. Now here, please note, most of the participants here are bishops. I dare say, as someone who loves the church, do our priests know what the church teaches? Sometimes, with all due respect to you, do the bishops know the latest teaching? Of course, bishops are so occupied. But how can we dare say we know? So seminarians need to be trained properly with regard to what the church teaches, not what this theologian or that theologian teaches, what the official church teaches. I have found most of my I am teaching for 28 years now, both in Sri Lanka, Rome, and elsewhere. I have found ordained priests who know nothing about church's doctrine. They go by a pre-Vatican II book or something. So we need to, that I stress, well-trained and knowledgeable priests. Otherwise, how can you accompany people? Thus, the document insists that laws cannot be simply applied. And this Pope is known for his very rhetorical way of talking. He says laws cannot be used as stones to throw at people. But we need to begin with the persons involved. So the question is, as Jesus used to say, what is more important, the laws or the persons? Laws are necessary. If anyone says church's laws are not important, I think he is not a Catholic. But laws are only a means to an end. Persons. Such pastoral care, especially with regard to complex cases, demands skills, etc. Therefore, such care cannot be given by, in Italian it sounds nice, sedendo alla sua scrivania, sitting at their desk. By the way, Amoris Laetitia was originally written in Italian. So, we need to consider the church as a field hospital, and we need to feel the smell of the sheep. And couples or families cannot be pigeonholed, the Pope's words, not my words, as regular and irregular. Let's take, there's a certain pastoral case. I take my canon law code and say, this is regular, this is not regular. They are necessary. I do that very often when people come for counseling to me, both in Sri Lanka and elsewhere. However, that's not necessary. That's not enough. We need to accompany them and see how in this situation that person will fit in, person will be affected by the values that cover the laws. After all, now here is another important point, dear friends, grace of God. This Pope repeats this even with regard to synodality. When we were at Frascati, some of the responses we saw, how much of room do we pastors, priests especially, and bishops give to the grace of God to act? We are enclosed very often with our own legal frameworks. Is there any space for God's grace to act? And I quoted deliberately, Pope doesn't do that, but I quoted one of my favorite phrases from the Johannine Gospel, chapter 3, verse 8. Jesus tells Nicodemus, the Spirit blows where he wills. None of us, no priest, no bishop, not even the Pope can control the Holy Spirit. That we should know. Some may not like me saying this, but we have to say the truth. That's why I was called for. So the Spirit, let the Spirit be the Spirit, Holy Spirit. That's an opportunity. The Pope wants pastors to avoid the cold bureaucratic morality that is performed sitting at their official desk. I will go faster. If you want, you can get them from Father Clarence or the organizers later. The entire thing is available. Of the various pastoral issues dealt with in chapter 6, the issue of interfaith marriages. Here again, Father Clarence and others who were in the OTC may remember how we dealt with, didn't we, Father Clarence? In 2 FABC papers were written on this. Interfaith marriages, both disparity of cult marriages and mixed communion marriages. How they provide, and the Pope says now, but we said it already a few years ago in our FABC papers, I have them here. We said a mixed marriage is an opportunity. We talk about triple dialogue. In Asia, a mixed marriage is an opportunity. Take Thailand, take Sri Lanka. An interreligious marriage. Let's look at the positive side just as we look at the negative side. How many of us do that? And the Pope invites us to use them as opportunities. In FABC papers, we already discussed in those numbers. The special pastoral care needed for those in civil marriages or those who are simply living together. Here, the Pope uses what Pope John Paul II taught us so beautifully. The law of gradualness. We can't expect suddenly a married couple to just fit into what the church teaches. And I want to draw, with your permission, dear pastors here, both priests and bishops, how patient are we with ourselves? How patient are we with priesthood when they don't fit into the ideal? We allow them graduality. Why not the same be applied to married people, to family people? That's the issue. Pope John Paul II taught it long ago. Also, the care needed for those who are separated, divorced, or unjustly abandoned. Number 242 speaks. Then single parents, elders, etc. But I want to... homosexual persons. This was the issue. I know so many bishops who were present at the 2 synods. You remember how people, bishops and others, were worried about this particular point because they thought Pope is going to allow hereafter homosexual marriages. So the constant teaching of the church from 1975 persona humana is there's a distinction made for the first time, 1975, CDF made the distinction. Homosexual persons, homosexual activities. Homosexual persons are accepted by the church in 1975, CDF said. Homosexual acts are condemned as intrinsically evil. And the Pope repeats it and says, this is the official teaching of the church. So no way of accepting those homosexual unions as marriages. Marriage is limited only to heterosexual marriages. At the same time, this I faced personally, dear friends, not recently, about 3 years ago, a certain family suddenly discovered that their son was homosexual. And the family was shattered. Very pious family. Are we going to condemn them? The Pope says, please try to understand the feelings, sentiments of a family like that. How many of us do that? So, then, here I am about to finish. The pastoral care of the divorced and the remarried, which was another thorny issue. With regard to them, the Pope does not provide any new doctrine, but simply develops, I underline the word. In fact, right now I am doing a course in Rome, both at Urbaniana and at Alfonsianum, development of moral doctrine. Moral doctrine doesn't remain static. Understanding differs. Moral doctrine develops. And the best example, if you want, during the discussion we can do that. Pope John Paul II was the first to say, all the divorced and remarried are not in the state of sin at the same degree. They are in a state of sin. Some are unjustly abandoned. Others are having their own difficulties. So different degrees of culpability, colpevolezza. So we can't condemn all of them as same, not only with regard to divorce and remarriage, with regard to other matters. We'll discuss if you want. So Benedict XVI developed the same thing in Sacramentum Caritatis in 2007 and said, we cannot condemn all the remarried people as living in sin at the same level. Some are innocent, unjustly abandoned, traditional moral theology. In such cases, can't we consider discerning whether they are worthy of receiving the sacraments? That's the issue. That is all such, I have said it already, using traditional fundamental moral theological principles as given in Catechism of the Catholic Church. Amoris Laetitia teaches that in those cases where such a personal and pastoral discernment reveals no serious state of sin, such couples could even approach the sacraments, including the Eucharist. Footnotes 336 and 351. It's not a blanket statement allowing everybody to receive. That's utter irresponsibility. That's not the issue. And if you remember, this is nothing new. Some of the seniors, especially bishops and priests here, I am quite senior now, ordained for 35 years, but much before me, there was a thing, some of the senior bishops will remember, and priests, there was the accepted thing called internal forum solution. We tell certain people, don't receive in this church, go to another church and receive after discerning. It was there, approved by the Holy See. Anyway, the last point. The document does not negate the immorality of those who deviate from the ideal of the church. Let's say a couple has got divorced and remarried. That's not the ideal for the church. We should never think Amoris Laetitia has come to justify it. Not at all. It's a state of imperfection. But what can we do with regard to those people in that state of imperfection? In the spirit of Jesus of Nazareth, in the spirit of chapter 8 of John's Gospel, the woman caught in the very act of adultery. So, AL is on the lookout for pastoral opportunities to do what we can. Here I want to repeat what good Pope John the 23rd used to say. Church is not only a very sure teacher, her doctrine is very sure, but also a tender mother. La Chiesa non solo è un insegnante sicurissimo, ma anche una madre tenerissima. That's very important. We forget the madre part. Last but not least, this, dear friends, is the novelty of Amoris Laetitia, and it is in this sense that it is really good news, not any news. Good news, probably not for us pastors, some of us who have strict conditions. It is good news for persons in families and marriages that are in crisis, and it thus provides so many opportunities in the pastoral field, making it really a field hospital. Thank you for your patient attention.
Thank you very much, Father Vimal Tirimanna, for your clear presentation, especially also because you highlight some important novelties that give opportunities in Amoris Laetitia. Please come back to the stage, Father. let us now go to the 2 minutes of silent prayer. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit. Now, dear participants, we have around 30 minutes to have a plenary conversation, so question and answer. I will give for the first session 3 questions or comments, and then I will give time to the speakers to give their reaction or their comments also. So for the first session, 3 questions. Cardinal, please.
Thanks to Bishop Lee, and thanks to Father Vimal, whom I know for a long time. Thanks because they have clarified the confusion that has been going on and still goes on issues that they have tackled, or it is tackled in Amoris Laetitia. Really, Father Vimal, you have clearly said the position of the Holy Father. Sometimes in the church, I feel the pastoral approach to the people has been too much dogmatized, or through the pastoral approach, some of the dogmatic conclusions are being questioned. I always felt there are 3 dogmatic constitutions of the Vatican II, and there is one also, Gaudium et Spes. And I see the Holy Father, Pope Francis, is trying to be a pastor. But that does not take away his preaching the truth of the doctrine of the church. And thank you for confirming that position and telling us very clearly that we are to be pastor to the families without questioning our doctrinal positions. Thank you.
Thank you. The second one, please.
Thanks very much for Vimal. As you are a professor, you did it as a professor and we followed as students. We often hear about accompaniment. From the seminary days, we hear accompaniment. The rector and the animators would accompany the seminarians. And when we come here, we discuss the families. The bishops and the pastors and others must accompany the families. But in concrete case, to me, accompaniment depends person to person, country to country, church to church. And in such situation, we know that commonly we can give some guidelines, but I would like to get some tips in modern families, how we can accompany modern families. When there is no time for the members of the family, husbands and wives, they are very busy with their own life and careers, and how we can accompany them. And but some places where the families are very much scattered, and there we are unable to reach them. Giving some doctrinal ideas that doesn't do any good. But concretely, can you propose some strategy to accompany the families? Thank you.
Thank you. The third one, please.
I'm Bishop Emmanuel Rosario from Bangladesh. I thank Father Vimal and Bishop John Lee for their nice presentations, and also the speakers, presentators, those who presented on the family in the morning. Many good things we have heard, the beauty, the splendor of families, and as well as the challenges. What Father Vimal has presented or clarified certain things is very helpful. So what he said about the context of each family and each problem, that is very important, I think, to see the case, see the things in the context, even the problem and the solutions too. So now, after this, in this post-modern era, the changing epoch, we see that the Asian families, what was the main heritage of the families are the values, are the customs, the practices. And now we see a rapid decline of all these values. And we see also some realities in the families which are caused because of migration, the separation between the husband and wife, the children. So how to accompany in that case, in concrete context, how the pastors can go after those families or members, because the family is the domestic church, and the church is a family of families. So if all the members are of the families are the parts of the family, the body of Christ, so any problem is owned to that body. So we need to heal, that we know, but how to do in that context, that is very challenging. Thank you.
Thank you. The next one, yeah. I will first give time to the speakers. If Bishop John or Father Vimal will give your comment to the three first questions.
Year 2015, I was in Rome, and I met Indian couple, and she married Indian, so Hindu, so she cannot receive Holy Communion. He met a pastor, and he find her cannot receive Holy Communion, but she said, I would like to receive Holy Communion. So the pastor accompanied him to go hold the process, and later on she can, and even her husband was baptized. So through this experience, she organized an association to helping those families. So from my point of view, when I back to Taiwan, I still sharing with our priest, said, before we say, oh, you divorced, remarried, you cannot receive Holy Communion, we look like finished, but wrong. That is the meeting point, starting point. We meet these sheep. We starting with them because they longing to be recommunion with us. And the second is when the people will realize at the moment he or she cannot receive Holy Communion, but she still can attend Holy Mass. And in Taiwan, in my group, I don't know this good or bad, because now we become more people during the receive Holy Communion as they just come to blessing. More people, because we say, if you are not Catholic or you not feel you are ready, you not receive Holy Communion, but you can receive the blessing. So more people come. So we realize so many people, they want touch by the love of God, but they have some problem in their life. We need more manpower to help them. But really, we see this, we will find really urgent so many things, so many jobs we should to do. That's my sharing some examples. Thank you.
Thank you. Father Vimal, please give your comments.
I don't pretend to have answers for all the questions raised, but I want to comment on some other comments, especially with regard to the first one by Cardinal Rosario. It is true, unfortunately in the church, even the pastoral teachings are dogmatized. That's one of the problems as a moral theology professor, especially in Rome, that I face. The Holy Father, present Holy Father, is openly saying we need to be pastoral. He's just following Gaudium et Spes. But how many of my students are willing to be pastoral? In Rome, actually, I must say this, even if it takes a minute. When I was a young student, I was highly thrilled by, because I was a seminarian in 1980s. That time there was this liberation theology, justice issues and all. That time we were so excited, I used to give enough trouble to my professors of moral theology. And they had to defend the church. But today the roles have changed. I try to provoke my students to ask questions, and they are defending some of the early doctrines, and it's very different. So just to illustrate, so Cardinal, that is very true. But I think what matters to a gathering like this is the practical questions asked by the other two persons, while acknowledging what the Cardinal said. Accompaniment. I think the bishop who spoke said very correctly, it depends due to various different situations. I think he gave the very valid example of scattered parishes. Now, even in Sri Lanka, we have some dioceses that are, for example, the Diocese of Bishop Raymond, Diocese of Gaul, very scattered, not to say even that of Bishop Harold. But then there are also dioceses where it can be done. So my point, first of all, my gut level reaction is, should we take the difficult part and negate it? These are difficulties, practical difficulties. In some places, not all the places. In all the places, they are not rural and scattered and unreachable. There are places. But what about the reachable places? At least there do we do that? That's the issue. So you can't bring in, as Thomas Aquinas said, the exception and negate the approach. There are exceptions. But the question is valid, namely, what can we do? Again, I want to quote Pope Francis. The crucial question to ask here is, are we supporting a maintenance church, maintaining the present structures, continuing to have it as it is, or are we trying to, at least now, through the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, find new ways, not that I have here, but I have jotted down while the two bishops were talking, the two last interventions. One is visiting the families. How many of that can be done? That can be done, and that should be done. How many of us visit families, leave alone accompanying? So then we can note, now I am a Redemptorist, I repeat, when we do missions, parish missions, we visit families, each family, and then we pick up, that family is not married in the church. Oh, this family, the unjustly abandoned. So we later visit again and attend to them. Or we can have special teams, parish teams, diocesan teams, only for this. Because church, what is the church? As FABC said long ago, church is the family of families. The health of the church as a family depends on the health of the families, individual families. So we cannot negate that. Another one is, I think Bishop Harold would know very well, I'm mentioning only Sri Lankan bishops because they are closer to me. BCCs. Everywhere, I mean, they can attend to that. More than that, also training lay leaders. A priest, I myself am a Catholic priest, although I am not into parish ministry. If I were a parish priest, I would have had the same difficulties my fellow parish priests are having. They are human beings, no? But what about training lay leaders to accompany such families? As Cardinal Farrell, who is in charge of lay dicastery now, Cardinal Farrell, he says, after all, the ministry of, pastoral ministry of family and marriage should be predominantly done by the lay people because they are married people, they know. Where necessary, they can get the priest. So that's one way of attending to it. Last but not least is, and I repeat, I don't know whether because I am into teaching ministry, formation of our seminarians. At how many places I have taught during my 29 years of teaching. Not only the seminary in Kandy and elsewhere, other places. But most of them are academic programs, not to be pastors. So that's one. And I stop here. Ongoing formation. How many of our priests are seriously, very often, I know in Sri Lanka, we have in almost all the dioceses and congregations, inputs, ongoing formation. But how many of our priests are motivated for them? Most of them come just for the sake of coming, that's all. So there has to be, these are simple things that can be done, but there may be others, probably the bishops themselves should be able to respond. Thank you.
Thank you. Now time for the next three questions. The first one, please, and the sister.
I am Bishop Samson Shukardin from Pakistan, and the both speakers, they have beautifully explained about the issues and also what the canon law says and what uh, the documents of Pope Francis is talking about it. Since I am from a Muslim country, we have some other issue. And one other issue is this, I just would like to add to it, that in Islam there are 4 marriages. And this is the normal for many people there. And our people, Christian, they also, many things they have adopted from Islam. They are influenced from Islam. And some families, some people, they have one wife, then they are marrying to another wife also. The third wife also, I know many people. I know the teaching of the church. I don't accept, and we don't accept these kind of people. But the issue is there that they say that if first wife has no children, what we will do, how our family will go forward. We need another wife for our children, for our future. In that matter, it is so difficult to understand this, to explain this, that the church is not allowing this. Church is not allowing, but I have a question that how we accompany them as a church, as a priest, in this scenario when in the society the things are different, but individually the church has different rules. Thank you.
Thank you. In front here.
Thank you very much. Is it? Yes, okay. I don't believe the church, people of God, began with the doctrines. I think that people of God started journeying, following Jesus, the pastor. So that not first the doctrine and then pastoral care, but the pastoral care, like Jesus the pastor, which requires deeply human and humane sensitivity of compassion, mercy, and tenderness. And related to this, I'm worried about LGBTQ people. We say these people have a right to be cared pastorally, but their acts are intrinsically evil. And I just wonder how people can really commit something, I mean, personally or together, intrinsically. The intrinsically evil thing could be nuclear weapons or human trafficking. So I believe that the church will have to also reflect and discern on the doctrine, following Jesus, the pastor. And so that means that what I would like to say is that we are now saying doctrines don't change. Pastoral care could be changed. But as people of God, I think we will have to also look at and reflect and discern on our doctrine in light of Jesus, the pastor, as in living equal discipleship. Thank you.
Thank you. Bishop here. Yeah.
Thank you, Bishop Lee and Father Vimal. The question actually, Father Vimal spoke something about seminary formation. I've always wondered how ready are we in the accompaniment. So that my question for Father Vimal is, do you think the present curriculum in the seminaries prepare us for accompaniment? Do you think the way our seminaries are structured are responsive to the present realities? What adjustments do you think we need so that we can also adjust? Because accompaniment also is an art. If we have not experienced accompaniment, it will be very difficult for us to accompany families. If the curriculum in the seminary the family is rarely spoken about. How can we accompany families? So the question is, being a professor, being a formator, what do you think are the adjustments needed in the formation of our seminaries and of our religious communities? Thank you.
Thank you. Please, one more question, and then I'll give time to the speakers.
I am Philip Neri Ferrao from India. It's not a question. I only wanted to compliment what Father Vimal was saying. This accompaniment is a very serious responsibility, and I know many of our pastors are overburdened. Parishes are sometimes big. I feel besides the things Father Vimal said, visiting families, I think we can make use also of our parish family cells, because he was speaking about the involvement of lay faithful, married couples accompanying people, families in difficulties. I think formation of parish family cells could be very helpful. Secondly, we have many family movements, and the members of the family movements are very zealous. We had one couple that spoke to us. I think they are very ready to accompany families. Thirdly, the parish council members. In many of our parishes, the parish council members are more busy with administrative tasks. They could be entrusted, they could function in a team spirit with our pastors to accompany our families, especially those who experience failures, crises in their life.
Thank you. Okay, the last one.
Bishop Nazarene from India. Thanks a lot for the presentation, especially to Father Tirimanna, because he has highlighted and focused on the pastoral aspect of our priestly life. My question goes whether you could throw more light on the personal and pastoral discernment that is needed today. You rightly said we need not have, so to say, some guidebook or handbook to apply in a particular situation or the crisis the family encounters. I too accept, having been both a teacher of theology, later in a parish, I also have such experiences of people encountering difficult, very, very difficult situation in their families. My question is whether you could throw more light on this, because personal and pastoral discernment, what do you actually try to tell us? The personal and pastoral discernment, all the more it has to be well catered and fostered and taught in the seminary, trained in the seminary. You rightly said so. So if only you could throw more light on that. Thanks.
Thank you. Bishop John or Father Vimal, before we have our break.
I try to find the English, but I cannot. The 2015, before the the conference, the Pope gave, because I'm kind of lawyer, the Metis Iudex Dominus Iesus. The Jesus is what is the compassion judge. That's why I mention this, is because the tribunal is always before is working very long period, sometimes 2 years for the case. But because the Pope produced that motto, were faster. But they give each diocesan bishop responsibility. We take care of our sheep, so don't need to go to the second level tribunal. The first one will pass positive, it's okay, then go to the bishop. Then bishop make a judge, then the case will finish, the close. So can you understand what I try to say? So our response is, each country has their own problem. Our pastor or bishop should take responsibility. Like Taiwan, we face the same marriage couple, and they come to church, and they are Catholics. And how we face them, and how if they challenge us, how we treat them. If they can divorce and remarriage people, they know they cannot receive Holy Communion, but they still want being in church. That were easy to take care of them. But homosexual movement, they want to challenge us. They want, so this is our big task in Taiwan. But at the moment, they are not really touch us yet. So God gave us time to discerning, to prepare ourselves, and to be company with them. But never we change our stand. It's not to say I will give him Holy Communion. No, it cannot. But we will dialogue with them and talk with them and try to find a way if they can join us, and or we can take care of them. I think take time. This is a long way to go to challenge all us, but the responsibility is given us, and we believe Holy Spirit will guide us. That's what we believe.
Thank you, Father Vimal.
I think quite a few questions were raised, but I don't think there's time to respond to each one meticulously. But I have jotted down a few points that would cover what I would say they would serve as responses. First of all, this formation for marriage, although that was not a particular issue, but that was underlined there, is taken for granted by most of us. That's why I referred to Cardinal Farrell. I mean, are we the priests and bishops who are the best persons to form people for marriage? That's a question we have to face squarely. Of course, with our theology, with our training, we should give our part. But as Cardinal Farrell and Pope John Paul II said long ago, and Pope Benedict XVI, when he was Cardinal Ratzinger, said, the real formators of would-be married couples and those who are already married should be the lay people, married people. Of course, we priests and bishops didn't fall from heaven. We are coming from families, definitely. But it should be mostly by lay people. So the present, I have a feeling, and I tell my students, and I want to say the same here, dear friends, often we think within our present structures. Not that I'm against structures, but they need to be widened. The parameters have to go beyond. That's one thing. Then with regard to, although I was talking about the development of doctrine, which was Cardinal Newman's main point, and Pope Benedict XVI had been saying again and again in his writings, and Vatican II said, and Pope John Paul II in Veritatis Splendor speaks about development of doctrine in Numbers 4, 27 and 28, Development of doctrine, not change of doctrine. Development. If you say doctrine changes, I don't want to leave any doubt about this, even if it takes time. If someone says church's doctrine something today and tomorrow another one, it's pure relativism. That's not the issue. That's why Cardinal Newman, now I think he's Saint Newman, isn't he? Saint Newman, Cardinal Ratzinger, who is no liberal, Pope John Paul II, development, all of us. Now when I was 6 years old, I was Vimal Tirimanna. When I was a seminarian, I was Vimal Tirimanna. Today I am Vimal Tirimanna. I am the same, but I have changed also, no? At least I had beautiful curly hair earlier. When Cardinal Rosario saw me first time, those days. So we change, but development means it's change as well as certain stable factors, which John Paul II has explained very well in Veritatis Splendor. And I want to make a remark in view of what was mentioned there by our sister there. Church exists to teach and develop revelation. Revelation made to the apostles and to their descendants today. If you read, what is the document on? I'm getting a blank. The Vatican document on Revelation. I'm ashamed I forgot it. De Verbum Numbers 8 to 10. It says doctrine develops. But what I want to say here is, without the church, there is no formation along the teachings of Jesus. So doctrine is necessary. I will be a heretic if I say doctrine is not necessary. But doctrine is only, as John Paul II said very clearly, a means to an end. That should not be forgotten. In fact, I was pleasantly surprised, and I get a little kick by saying that. Pope John Paul II, St. John Paul II said, even the church exists not for herself. By herself, church is useless, says him. In 1991, in his document on mission, he says, church exists for the kingdom. So it's a means to an end, which is true. Even FABC, by itself, there is no sanctity in FABC. It exists for the pastoral ministry. So that should be kept in mind. And also, we have a prophetic role. Here, I'm very categorical when I teach my students also, because in the secular world, there are so many liberal tendencies today. Homosexual marriages, this one, that one. Church stands straight and dignified with her doctrine. So if I say doctrine is not necessary, that's not Vimal. Doctrine is necessary, but it's not an end in itself. Doctrine is playing a prophetic role. And two other comments. I can't remember who asked about the curriculum in the seminary. Is it directed towards formation of pastors? I hope I won't offend anybody. Since you asked, dear Bishop, I have to give an answer. I won't be diplomatic. Most of the seminary curricula are not geared to forming pastors. If you want a straight answer. I am surprised. I remember it was, most of the bishops, Bishop Harold was there, and Cardinal Rosario, and I can see only those persons. You all were present when, in Vietnam, we had that plenary, was it 2012? When we had that, I, together with Bishop of Kandy, Bishop Vianney Fernando, emeritus bishop now, when I said that, he supported me. I said, we should pass a resolution saying that churches in Asia should implement, at least as part of the curricula in the seminary, FABC teachings. It was not. FABC is all pastoral teaching. How much of it? I have edited, and you have that document, and so many other things I have written on FABC. Who cares? Who cares? Do you think FABC plenary statements are being read in the seminaries? How many seminaries read pastoral documents? How many bishops' conferences have made it compulsory? Asian Bishops' Conference, we are Asians. How many of us, even when Urbaniana allows, Professor Sukaro, who is in charge of moral theology, he tells me, Vimal, why is that in Asian seminaries, including Sri Lanka? Why are you not including some of your own FABC teachings in the questions for the BTH? Have a course. So, there are, answer to your question, dear Bishop, is we are still in that dogmatic pre-Vatican II mentality in the seminaries. Last but not least, I also have a question to ask you, just to provoke. That's my style of teaching also. Someone, I think it was it Cardinal Philip Neri, I don't know, someone said, we have so many parish organizations. What was Cardinal Philip Neri who said it, I think. Parish organizations, parish structures. I think no other organization in the world has such well-organized things as the Roman Catholic Church. Are we using that? But how are we using? How many of those organizations are injected with Amoris Laetitia? Bishop Lee complimented me by coming here and saying, just before me now, he spoke about canonical sites. There's a thing called external forum, internal forum. Pope Francis has changed so many things. What is that called in canon law? Motu proprio. So many have been made to accommodate in the external forum, to accommodate difficult cases. But where there is no evidence that can be proved in the external forum, then the internal forum works. Because in the last analysis, it is the conscience of the person which works. On the last day, this is what I tell my students, when we stand before God, as Matthew chapter 25 verses 31 to 46 say, when we stand before God, God will not ask, did you feed that person because the church said? God will ask, did you do this? Did you? I, Vimal, did I do this or not? Did you did it or not? That is extremely important. But here I come to Bishop's question, I don't know your name, Bishop, about personal and pastoral, that's the question you raised, pastoral discernment.
I'm sorry, Father Vimal, please say it shortly.
Yeah. Should I answer that?
Yeah, but short.
If you want me to answer, I'll answer, otherwise I'll go. I have no problem. Personal and pastoral discernment, it is to do with internal forum solutions. Dear Bishop, if we leave persons to decide, as many of us parish priests do very often, you go and act according to your conscience. That's sheer nonsense. Relativism, subjectivism. When a pastor accompanies the person, it is the pastoral side. When you say personal and pastoral, I, a pastor, accompany this person in difficult marriage or family, forming him or her conscience according to the church's doctrine. But, a big but, the final decision depends on the person. Personal conscience. John Paul II, Benedict XVI, Pope Francis, Vatican II, all have affirmed that. That is what was called internal forum solution. If we want, we can discuss later. I see we have exceeded time. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Vimal. We give one again a big applause.